Well, the Eagles have to travel up the New Jersey Turnpike, as they do every year, and play the Giants at MetLife Stadium. And look, they've got a lot of questions, injury-related, which has been nothing new for them all year, but this one is different. I mean, Zach Ertz with the fractured ribs. There's a little bit of word that he's going to try to play. We'll see. Lane Johnson has been missing the last 2 games with the high ankle sprain, and now they lose Ronald Darby. He's the latest to go on IR, so there's a Sidney Jones / Rasul Douglas discussion to be had. So as we do every day at 4 o'clock, we bring in John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com to enlighten us. What's going on, John? Hope you had a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I hope you guys had a good holiday as well. Just standing out in a somewhat chilly NovaCare complex as Dallas Goedert and Avante Maddox are leaving. They're always together.
Oh, always. They're like best friends, right? Aren't they really tight?
Yeah, they're roommates.
Right.
They have a house together in South Jersey. Yeah, they're inseparable.
Nice. Well, let's start with Dallas Goedert. He had obviously an enormous game against the Cowboys. He would have had one last year, too, if they didn't take away a touchdown from him. So he seems to play well against that team. And with Zach Ertz's status, it looks like Dallas is going to have to play prominently into this game as well. I mean, as maybe a lead tight end, a number 1 type tight end.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Because if you see, Zach got hurt early against the Cowboys, and even in game there, although he was able to come back and get on the field and be a part of the offense, at that point Dallas Goedert sort of took over the number 1 tight end role because Zach was so limited. So even if he's able to play, I think you have to flip-flop those roles because Dallas is the healthy one, and he's the one who would be getting more traffic. But also, I mean, there's a lot. We were talking amongst each other here, and if you look at Doug's transcript from his press conference this morning, he might have had a slip, he might have not had a slip, but when he was talking about Zach Ertz and what he needs to do to play, he said next week. So I don't know if he means Sunday or if he means the Eagles are going to hold him for a potential Week 1 playoff game. But it was an interesting potential, at least, slip of the tongue as far as whether the Eagles think Zach Ertz is going to play Sunday against the Giants.
Well, they put the, I guess, the faux practice report out yesterday, right? Because they didn't practice yesterday, so they give you kind of a injury report that would look sort of like that if they had practice. And Zach, of course, was not on it, right? Not on it. He would not have been a participant.
Yeah, he would not. And we'll probably get it as we're on the air here. Mm-hmm. The practice report today. He was not there to the portion open to the media, so I don't expect that he did anything in practice today as well. But Doug has said if he is going to do something, it's going to be late in the week, and that would be obviously tomorrow, maybe some walkthrough on Saturday if he was going to play. So no surprise either way. He said early that he wasn't going to practice, and as you said, they had Christmas off, but they had a bit of a souped-up walkthrough on Tuesday. Wasn't involved with that either. And Doug he's already admitted he wouldn't be involved in that kind of stuff.
Now, do you think Zach is the kind of player who, if he can get himself right, leading up, he can test it on the field before the game, that they'll play him even if he doesn't practice on a Friday or Saturday? Because we always talk about if you're not practicing on Friday, you're definitely not playing. But there are certain guys who will be able to break that little unwritten rule.
Yeah, he's one of those guys as well. And it's sort of, to this point, he's sort of in the same category as Lane Johnson. If you leave it up to him, he's going to play.
Right.
He's going to try to play as long as it's not displaced, and it isn't. So he would fight through the pain. So it becomes a team issue at that point. Are they going to allow him to play? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the bigger question. And that's why I think Doug's wording was so interesting today as you try. I don't know if he just had a slip up or, as I said, he was trying to give us a little bit more. I tend to think it was a slip up, but I think it'll be a strictly Eagles decision because if Zach is given the opportunity, he's going to try to play. I mean, you saw it last week. He came back in.
Right.
And they gave him that opportunity. He tried to play through it.
Who is most likely, do you think, return between anybody who got hurt? I mean, you've got Zach Ertz, you got Lane Johnson. It sounds like Jordan Howard is fine. He's going to play, right? We're pretty certain on that.
Well, he's having a meeting today. Still not clear for contact, according to Doug from this morning. And he was having a meeting with the medical staff later today, is what Doug said. So he was at practice as usual, but he's always been at practice doing stuff in a limited fashion since the injury first occurred. So the hurdle for him is getting cleared for contact, but Doug did say he expects him to be cleared for contact. So I do expect Jordan to play. The matter is how much, and Doug said today it's Miles' job. He's the number one running back now. Boston Scott has earned his time, and really Jordan would be at this point the third running back as they try to ramp him up. Mm-hmm. Because I think people remember he's been out for 7 weeks. Right. So there's a conditioning aspect. He hasn't been cleared for contact for that entire period. So it's not like he's going to get out there and play 20 and get 25 touches anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's good to have good players. So the Eagles should be thrilled that they're on the verge of getting it back.
You have a story on 97.3 ESPN.com that says the running back committee could be back for Eagles, but you also agree, as you've said, that Jordan can only do so much in his first game. But as he gets healthier, if the Eagles are able to make the playoffs, do you think Doug would go back to that, I don't want to even call it 50-50 approach, although at times this year it was, or do you think Miles has kind of entrenched himself as at least the 65 to 70% carry back or plays back for this team?
Yeah, I think he solidified himself in that job. So he would be the lead back, and then it would become more of Jordan as the complement, sort of as it was from week one when they sort of handed the job to Miles and struggled a little bit, and then they made the switch. So I think you just go back to that early sort of give and take. And then the part where Darren Sproles would be involved, now Boston Scott is involved. So Doug has always liked this committee approach with different bodies and different looks, and I think when Jordan's back, he has the ability to do that. And then I think, in a certain extent, it comes down to how the game unfolds and the hot hand. He used that term as well. Miles obviously has the hot hand, so they're going to defer to him. But if Jordan shows up, say they make a deeper playoff run than most people expect, and you're playing a playoff game, and he rips off a 15, 17-yard run and does it again, then you might start trending in the other direction.
This might be a little bit of a reach, but do you think the Giants are going to sit anyone knowing their circumstance and it's the last game of the year and they want to head into the offseason a little bit healthier with some of these guys?
No, I always say coaches and players don't tank, front office executives do. So, I mean, if you look at the Giants from a draft perspective, if that's what people are hoping for, I mean, that was the game last week. If they wanted to lose a game, it was last week against Washington. They won it. They tried to win it. They're certainly going to try to win this game. So I heard one person on a different radio station asked me if they'd shut down Saquon Barkley. They're not shutting down Saquon Barkley. They're trying to win the game. Pat Shurmur's coaching for his job. And, you know, in some ways it's worse to have young players. And Saquon's in the second year. Daniel Jones is obviously a rookie because those guys just play. And they're going to try to play, and they're going to try to win the game.
Yeah, but absolutely. If they do beat the Eagles, then they're putting the Cowboys in potentially the playoff spot. And you know the Giants don't want to do that, right?
I'm not sure they really prefer either scenario,
I know.
to be honest.
Absolutely not. But what is the game plan defensively to stop this offense? Because we thought last week they did a great job at stopping the run and forcing Dak to beat them with the throw. Is it a similar game plan? Now they're on the road, which is a completely different defense for this Eagles team. Do they sell out to stop Saquon Barkley and then allow someone like Darius Slayton to beat one of our corners?
Yeah, I do think, especially now that you've seen Saquon Barkley healthy. Remember, he's had a difficult season from a health standpoint. He had the high ankle sprain, and he tried to come back early from it. Wasn't completely healthy. And really, the last game against the Eagles did a good job. I think he had 66 yards rushing, essentially nothing receiving. And then he's taken off since then. I mean, he's just exploded. He looks like the same guy he was as a rookie, one of the most dynamic playmakers in the NFL. Can beat you with the run, can beat you in the passing game, can take it. He's a home run hitter. He can take it the distance at any time. So, yeah, it starts with him from an Eagles perspective, from everyone's perspective who plays the Giants. They have to stop him first because he's the most dangerous player they have. And the problem for the Eagles is he's now his apex of danger, which he wasn't even 3 weeks ago, never mind earlier in the season. This guy's top 5 playmaker in the NFL when he's healthy. And he's healthy. And I always say it's not who you play, it's when you play him. A little bit of bad luck because they got Saquon healthy and at his apex.
Absolutely.
Well, good.
No, I just have one more. I was thinking with the defensive line and the pressure or lack thereof at times, I just don't know really what to expect out of Derek Barnett every game. Like, I'm just confused on what he is. Who is he? What is his talent level? I'm so confused. I know he can bend very well. That's his strongest part of his game. But, who is Derek Barnett when it comes to this defensive line?
Well, a couple things with Derek. He hasn't been healthy, and he tried to play through the ankle injury last week. Maybe shouldn't be on the field. Jim Schwartz noted earlier this week how tough he was as a player trying to fight through that. So I think people don't understand. We talked about Lane Johnson. We talked about Zach Ertz potentially playing through injuries. Derek's in that same category as a guy who will do that. So, I always say fans don't look at that. They don't enter that in the equation. They expect him to be the same guy every week. They don't understand that people are fighting, especially this late in the season, how many players are dinged up and banged up and fighting through things. And they're better than the alternatives. So, Derek offers obviously snaps and reps. And when he was out, you had Vinny Curry playing more than he's used to. Josh Sweat playing more than he's used to. So it gives you another rotational option. But as far as what he is when he's healthy, he's a pretty good pass rusher. But if you look at where he was selected, we talk about this all the time, a lot with Nelson Aguilar. He was the 14th pick in the draft, so people expect double-digit sacks, and he hasn't been that guy yet. I think he has the potential to do that if he's ever healthy for 16 games. But he hasn't been healthy the past few seasons.
And speaking of Nelson Aguilar, as the injury report has just come out, once again, Nelson, who did not practice with the knee. Zach Ertz did not practice. They're saying ribs/back. So it's not just a rib injury, interestingly. And then Lane Johnson did not practice because of the ankle. Everybody else was limited. So, John, somebody asked me over the holidays, it was kind of one of those family, sports argument things, is the Eagles' defense good? And it was one of the hardest questions I ever had to answer. I almost felt like saying home or road. Like there are two different types of teams. And even taking it a step further, this is really perplexing, right? They are 9th in the league in yards allowed, but 16th in points scored. Now, I've seen teams who give up a lot of yards but hold the points down because they're really good in the red zone. This is almost antithetical. It's very rarely you see a team not give up a whole lot of yards, be one of the top 10 in that, but give up a lot of points.
Yeah, and I think it is the big plays, the explosive plays, and really it started week 1. We've been talking about it all season. And they're susceptible to giving up big plays down the field. They have been pretty consistently throughout. You're right about the home versus road splits. We ask Jim that every week. We ask the players that every week. Just ask Brandon Graham that. Nobody can put their finger on it, but they're really good at home, and they've been really bad on the road. And unfortunately, this game's on the road. So, I mean, they got to figure it out. And you look, this is a pretty significant sample size. You're in week 17 of a 17-week season, and they haven't been able to figure it out. So
is there something you put your finger on, John? Like, because I know sometimes your jump off the ball is obviously going to be a lot better at home on the road based on the crowd noise, but it's not like we see them, jumping off sides a lot on the road, or maybe we have. I haven't really counted it, but I can't figure out what tangibly is different about them.
Well, now, I mean, yeah, everyone goes through that. Every team in this league, and
Right.
that's why it's easier to win at home than on the road. That part's obvious for defenses. That's why, because you can get off the football where you can't, especially in loud environments on the road as well. So, yeah, that's part of it, but it shouldn't be this bad.
Right.
It should be worse. It should always be worse.
Mm-hmm.
But not to this level where you're amongst, really, from a points allowed perspective, you're one of the best teams in the NFL at home, and you're one of the worst on the road. It usually doesn't work that way. If you're a good defense, you're dominant at home, and you probably hold your own on the road. And this team hasn't been able to do it, and not just this year, really throughout the Jim Schwartz era. That's been the story. It's just been amped up. It's been worse this year. The dichotomy of how bad they played on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, you got to look at the New York Giants and say part of the hope of this game has to be that it's not a very good roster. It's not a very good team. And you hope you can get out of there. And if it's a 35-31 win, you'll take it.
Talking with John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com, Football at 4. You can find John on Twitter at JF McMullen. John, we were kind of going back and forth a little earlier on, and I don't know, it's really not a great situation, but with Ronald Darby out, it sounds like Jim is leaning toward playing Rasul Douglas there as a starter. We mentioned that Sidney Jones has made 2 really big plays. I mean, they don't have these winning streaks without those 2 Sidney Jones plays in the last 3 games. Where would you go with this? Do you think it's the right move to go back to Rasul, or do you think that they'll wind up being a rotation? Will there be a short leash on Rasul to get Sidney in there if Rasul's getting burned?
Yeah, I mean, from my personal perspective, I would start Sidney Jones. I think the Eagles are going to start Rasul Douglas, and Doug talked about it again today. And that's true. I mean, typically Sidney has played the left side. This is the right corner, and Rasul has played that since day one in camp. So he's got a lot more experience, so I get that part of it. But I do think either way it's going to be a short leash. If they started Sidney, it would be a short leash. If they start Rasul, as I expect, it will be a short leash. And if they start to struggle, they'll try the other one.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I think you're going to see them both anyway.
Right.
And hopefully one of them plays better. But I do think that Sidney Jones is finally gaining some confidence. And I think I don't think people realize how much confidence means in this game. And he's just a more talented player. So if he has confidence, I think his skill set will place him above Rasul Douglas, and the quicker you get there, the better, from my perspective.
I feel like the confidence is not just being shown on the field, but I know you're in the locker room a lot more than I am, but earlier in the year and even in the past, he always struck me as a very quiet, introverted guy who, even when he speaks at a very low level. And in the last 2 games where he's made the plays, been home games, speaking to him afterward, he's almost had like this smile on his face, and he's been more enthusiastic, and he's spoken louder, and it did make – I'm usually not the reactionary type to say, start this guy, I think he's there, and I certainly am not convinced he's there, but I saw something not just on the field, but even just talking to him that made me think he's kind of taken a step back here and maybe appreciated being in the game more, and he does seem like a different person even to talk to. I don't know if you've gotten that same feeling.
No, we just talked to him today. We just got out of the locker room, and it was that same type of thing. He's much more self-assured, and that's what happens. I mean, it generally happens for a team when you start winning games. I mean, and people say winning cures all ills, and to a certain extent that's true, and you don't even bring up the context of the opponent. three bad teams. Dak Prescott taking 2 shots in the shoulder to try to get through a game. All of that is context. And, it doesn't matter. You won at the end of the day. And from Cindy's perspective, it doesn't matter because he made plays. And he's feeling good about himself. And I think, that's part of the reason I would start him. And I think the coaching staff should realize this guy's sort of feeling himself a little bit. You know how talented he is from a trait perspective. I think it's time to pull the trigger. I think they're ultimately going to pull the trigger. It's just how quickly do they get there.
Speaking of confidence, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside started out the game with 2 really impressive catches. Do you think we will see a game this year, hopefully this Sunday, where J.J. Arcega-Whiteside gets maybe 5 or 6 of those catches instead of 2 in the beginning of the game and then going quiet? Or a few games ago he had that beautiful over-the-shoulder catch and that was it. Will we see more catches in one game and during one drive, and then the next drive he does it again? Will we see more consistency out of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside based off of the confidence of having some nice catches?
Well, I think maybe this week, if Zach doesn't play, you have to get him more involved. One of these things, and you can look at it from really when Boston Scott first started playing as well, you have that scripted portion, which is, it's not really 15 plays. I think, people don't understand that. The minute you get to third down, you're off script. If something happens, you can get off script. There's a lot of ways you get off script. But clearly, that first game, Boston Scott, they had him in the game plan for those first 15 plays. Clearly last week, JJ was in that first 15 plays. And then when that's over, you go, then it's in game. Then you lean on what you do. And those guys weren't involved. And that's why you see early spikes and then they're just forgotten about. So I think that's a coaching staff thing. I think that's a Doug thing. If JJ's hot, as he was early in that game, he made a great catch. Early made another catch. You shouldn't forget about it. So I think that's more of a coaching staff and play calling thing than JJ just disappearing. Because typically, going to be honest with you, they're not game planning with JJ in mind. But I think if you have a hot player, you should utilize that player.
All right, well, we'll have to see on Sunday if J.J. Arcega-Whiteside becomes a little bit more part of the – it almost feels like it's a you got to crawl before you walk thing with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So we'll see if he can do a little bit more crawling on Sunday against the Giants. John, thanks so much. We will, as always, we'll catch you at Football 4 tomorrow.
All right, thanks, guys.